Lecture 2, Scarcity, Trade-off, and Production Possibilities. So we have four objectives in this lecture. We are going to be taking a look at what we mean by production possibilities curve. Some texts will call it production possibility frontier. Then we'll take a look at economic growth and the production possibilities curve. Then we'll move on to market prices, coordinate economic activity. We'll see how market prices achieve that. And finally, we'll take a look at the circular flow model. This is extremely important to remember and be comfortable with. Now let's start with production possibilities curve. So what is a production possibilities curve? It's simply a curve that shows the potential total output combinations of any two goods for an economy given the inputs and technology available. So we reduce it just to two goods to be able to study. However, in real life, we know that we generally have more than two goods. There's no economy that only produces two goods. We produce thousands of goods in Canada, for example, goods and services. But to make things really easy to study the concept of production possibilities, we will reduce it to two goods. And it simply illustrates the economic concepts of scarcity, choice, and trade-offs. So that's what it will be showing. So what is a production possibility curve? We are going to look at the assumptions of the production possibility curve. We assume we only have two products. We assume we are at full production, and we assume the resources and technology available are fixed. So technology and resources are not changing. Now remember, when we talk of resources, we refer to land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. So we are simply saying that these resources are fixed. Full production simply means they are fully used, and we are using all our resources only to produce two products. So we have this production possibilities curve. Now, if we assume we are producing two products, shelter and food. So if you use all your resources, land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship to produce shelter, you will produce 10 units of shelter and 0 units of food. If you decide to use all your resources to exclusively produce food, you'll produce 80 units of food and 0 unit of shelter. Now, however, you can produce anywhere along this curve. This curve shows the different combination of the two goods you can produce when you use all your resources. So if you are at A, you will produce 0 food and only shelter. At E, 0 shelter, only food. At B, you will produce about 20 food and just 9 units of shelter. So when you leave from one point to another, first of all, it shows a choice you've made. You can choose to produce B. You are at A, you choose to produce B. What does that mean? It simply means you are giving up 1 unit of shelter in order to choose 20 units of food. Because here you had 10 units of shelter and 0 units of food. If you choose 20 extra units of food, it means you have to give up 1 unit of shelter. So this simply shows opportunity cost. You choose this, it means you forego the building of this extra unit. Now, just to let you know, any point along this curve is a point of efficiency. What is efficiency in this context? It means you are using all your resources, there is no unemployment. Now you can operate anywhere below this curve. The gray area shows the region of inefficiency. Inefficiency in what sense? In that you are producing but not using all your resources. For example, you can produce 40 units of food and 4 units of shelter. However, this implies you are not using all your resources because you could simultaneously increase the amount of food and shelter without without sacrificing anything. However, on this curve, you cannot produce any extra unit of one particular good without sacrificing the other. You cannot be at 10 and produce any amount of food without sacrificing some unit of shelter, because this is your production possibilities. Above the curve is not attainable because for you to rise here, you need extra units of resources. You need more resources. Here you are not using all your resources. Here you are operating efficiently and you have to choose what you want to produce. Now, think of a student who has maybe 10 hours, who has only 2 courses, and they have 10 hours to study per week. Now, if they operate along their production possibility curve, they will be efficient. But if they are below their production possibility curve, they are just wasting time. Maybe they sit in the library and they get a nap or something like that. Now, for them to score above their production possibility curve is impossible, except they give up time they were using for something else in order to increase their production possibilities. Here, for example, if you want to increase it, you just need more resources. So that's the concept of production possibilities. It shows you the point of efficiency. It shows you trade-off that for you operating along this curve, if you want to produce an extra unit of another good or service, you need to sacrifice another. It shows the point of inefficiency or unemployment, and it shows points you cannot attain. So let's represent it graphically. You can clearly see that at this point you have 10 of shelter, 0 food. At B you have 9 shelter, 20. You can clearly see that you have to sacrifice 1 unit of shelter in order to produce 20. Now, every time you produce extra 20, you can see that you don't only sacrifice 1. This is very important. Here you sacrifice only 1 unit to produce 20. Now, to produce the next 20, you don't sacrifice 1, you have to sacrifice 2. To produce the next 20, you don't sacrifice 2, you even sacrifice more units and more units as you keep going. This shows the principle of increasing opportunity cost. So as you move on along your production possibility curve, you have to sacrifice more units of one in order to get any additional unit of the other. Let's move on. So all points on the curve are efficient. All points in the shaded area are inefficient. Any point outside the curve is simply not attainable with the current resources and technology you have. So in other words, efficiency requires society to use its resources to the fullest extent. No wasted resources, no unemployment. Let's take a look at the law of opportunity cost. This simply refers to the concept that as more of one item is produced by the economy, the opportunity cost of additional units of that product rises. That's what we were talking about when we looked at the table, that you need to give up more and more in order to produce one additional unit. So this is shown in this diagram. Here you give up 1, here you give up 2, here you give up more and more units in order to produce the same amount of the other, and vice versa. This is simply the law of increasing opportunity cost. Now, why is that like that? These are some potential reasons. Some resources and skills cannot be easily adapted from their current use. You cannot just switch and say, okay, I used to produce shelter, now let me give up the resources or the people who used to work in that particular department. Let me take them into this other department and they will be as efficient. No, they were specialized. It takes time and some cannot even adapt. So here it says some are just less adaptable. Some resources are less adaptable. And of course, the production of additional units become increasingly more costly. That's just the idea behind it. Now, what's the business connection? This curve helps managers visualize what the level of production should be. You should be operating at your production possibilities curve. It helps managers make firms product mix decision. For you to operate at your production possibility curve, what combination of goods and services do you want to be on that curve? It also helps them determine the optimal level of capacity to operate relative to profitability. So you have to be on that curve. What do you have to give up in order to produce what will be the most profitable? You never want to operate below that curve. And now the next part, the next section is economic growth and production possibilities, and we'll see that in the next video.